And finally, so while all you young people were gyrating to Elvis or rocking around the clock or whatever else you were up to, what were the old gadgets doing? What was mainstream, middle-aged Britain doing in the 50s? Traditionally, the picture's pretty simple, isn't it? The grey austerity of war and labour gives way to coronation and gives way to the end of sweet rationing, gives way to yippity-doo, the bright unlit supplants of you've never had it so good. There's actually a lot to say for that. Consumption rose by about 20% through the 50s. We mentioned real wages. Average wage pretty much doubles in money terms. Hire purchase controls are ended in 54, which means you could buy your consumer durables on the tick. In other words, you get it and you pay it off month by month until you've paid it all off. The hallmark goods of the era, fridges, gramophones, motor cars, washing machines, and increasingly towards the end of the years, the TV. Over half of tellies purchased were purchased on HP. This is also the age of the retail chain store. These names actually existed before the war, but they really come into their own in many ways in this era. Boots, W.H. Smith's, Woolworths, Woolies as we called it, Marks and Spencer's. The supermarket arrives. The first Sainsbury's opens in Croydon in 1950. There are 300 supermarkets by 1960. There were nearly 3,000 by 1967. The nation's diet begins to change. Children drink pop, Iron Brew and Tizer. Sliced loaf, the tea bag. The car, 37% of families own a car by 65. The motorway, the A road, the multi-storey car park is a thing of the 60s. And towards the end of the Conservative period, the Beeching report will lead to the closure of 5,000 miles of railway line and 2,000 stations. The motor car will become king. Popular culture, for most people, had a lot to do with what they'd been before. The Mirror, the Express and the Mail were the biggest selling daily newspapers, the populars as we call them. And the Sunday papers were a sort of amazingly popular British phenomenon. The news of the world with its scandals was read by lots of people, my nan especially. Television was gaining a foothold, but really the dominant forms of popular entertainment were actually the radio and cinema. The average person in Britain by the early 50s went to the cinema 28 times a year. Now, given that some people never went, that means a lot of people doing a lot of cinema watching. Radio gave us popular shows such as Listen with Mother, you could listen to when you were little children, which featured Andy Pandy and all sorts of those things, to family favourites, which was listened to by millions. Family favourites was people all over the world of the Commonwealth sending their love to Auntie Beryl in Wigan, and Auntie Beryl in turn sending their love to Frank and Irene in Sydney. The Conservatives broke the BBC's monopoly when it created ITV in 1955. Famously, the BBC ran a spoiler, The Archers, which was the big soap opera they ran. They killed off one of the key characters, Grace Archer, in a fire. The British this period were great joiners. The Scouts, the Guides, church, youth clubs, boys' brigade, girls' brigade. Clubs for adults. The London suburb of Woodford had 142 separate clubs that adults went to. Publications catered to all these wonderful hobbies. The most popular of the 250-odd periodicals dedicated to the hobby included Angler's News, Popular Gardening, Bird Fancying, and Cycling. 1 in 5 families had a dog. 1 in 3 had a cat. The two great staples of traditional British life, the pubs and the churches, were in gradual, but inexorable, I think, decline. And meanwhile, the holiday resort had its golden age as paid holidays now became the norm. They'd been introduced just before the Second World War. So the working classes descended en masse in packed trains during the peak months of July and August to iconic resorts such as Blackpool, or indeed Glasgow, came to Whitley Bay, but that was quiet. And of course, Blackpool had its reputation for high living, let's face it, for sex, that translated ad, along with variety shows, Clandy-Floss. Blackpool had an amazing 7 million visitors a year in the 50s. The better off went to Southport or Scarborough, and if you were really aspirational, you went to the Cornish Riviera. We went to the Cornish Riviera in the 60s. foreign packages holidays became affordable. By 1958, 2 million people holidayed abroad with cheap charter flights and long-distance coast travel. By 1960, 3.5 million people did. In 2 years, 1.5 million more. New ways of eating opened. Faux American steakhouses like the Bernie Inn, or burger bars like the Wimpy, or fake continental coffee houses, usually run by Italian immigrants. This is the first age of drinkable coffee in British history, unless you happen to live in South Wales, in which case the interwar period was. Foreign influence began to improve the dismal story of British food. Chinese and Italian restaurants, the availability of continental ingredients such as olive oil, which you got from the chemists, specialist shops, and even supermarkets. The most influential British cookery writer of the 20th century, the Bohemian Elizabeth David, after swanning around France and doing all sorts of exciting things, wrote cookery books about Mediterranean food. The middle classes began to cook Mediterranean food. Mind you, in April 60, the British ran the April Fool of the spaghetti harvest, the failure of it, which the nation fell for. Spag bol was cutting-edge cuisine in 1960, believe me. I think in the end, while a lot of focus is given to all this cultural change stuff we talked about before, if you want to think about the Britain of the 50s, I'd say think about the 2 million people who went fishing every weekend. There might have been 1,000 trendy coffee bars. Okay, there were 6 million budgerigars. And the top-selling single might be bought by 500,000 people. There's nothing near the bums on cinema seats in a week. Once again, there's a lot of truth to say that Britain of the 50s was still the Britain of hearth, home, mum and dad, mum at home, good housekeeping, and all was content and safe in the world. But all of that was about to change, and change big time.